Hello, Facebook fans and YouTube fans of DX Engineering. It's Tuesday afternoon here in the Eastern time zone of the USA. It is time for Tuesdays with DX Engineering. And this is a show where we bring on DX Engineering employees to talk about themselves, talk about what they're doing in the hobby, and talk about maybe some customers. Today we have from Austin, Texas, Jeff N5TJ, part of the DX Engineering sales and support staff. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Tim. Thanks for having me today. Happy to be
It's
here.
it's great to have you, Jeff. Want to talk about we're here in the at the peak of the sunspot cycle, and I want to talk about simple antennas that maybe guys haven't thought about, hams haven't thought about that they could get up and get on the air with, and that are very effective. And you have one of them. So
Tim,
let's
I
talk
do.
about your antenna.
Sure. A little background. Been a ham a long time. Lived in a number of locations, and we live in an area where we have restrictions, like many people do, kind of HOA. We moved here to Austin several years ago, and when we were in Dallas, lived in a similar situation, and I had a butternut vertical in my yard, and it worked well. And the butternut verticals are great antennas. When we moved here to Austin, we have a slope on our lot. It's very rocky soil. And I looked at putting up the vertical and it just didn't look like a great choice. It was going to be very low in my backyard and it would be hard to get radios on it for the perform. So when I was looking at the house and figuring out what else could I do for an antenna for the HF bands, I came across we're using an N5TJ antenna and using a random wire. And so what I did was did some research and exactly using a 72-foot piece of wire fed with a 9-to-1 transformer, and it's worked out much better than I expected, actually, on the HF bands.
And so let me know when you see the Chameleon 9-to-1.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right, so you've got that up there. So what you did, let's talk about dimensions and coax and everything. You
Sure.
took a transformer like this, a
Yes.
9-to-1, and what's the length of your wire?
Well, I'm using a wire that's, as I recall, it's 72 feet. And there's some research out there that people can, study online and do some searches. With the random wire, and N-Fed half waves are very popular now. So N-Fed half waves are half wave antennas. This antenna is meant, what's called a random wire. And you're trying to pick an antenna for the bands that you're going to operate that it's not a quarter or a half wavelength. Quarter wave antennas are pretty close to 50 ohms, so you wouldn't need the transformer. And half wave antennas are thousands of ohms, so you need a 49-to-1 transformer. So with a 9-to-1, you're trying to get the antenna somewhere close to 50 ohms, and you absolutely then need a very good external antenna tuner to tune the antenna SWR down to use with your radio. That's a critical part of the solution is you got to have an external antenna tuner.
All right, so you put this 9-to-1 balun up at the basically the feed point of the wire, right?
Correct. Feed point of the wire, run the wire, and then you can run the other side to ground. You can use a counterpoise. In my case, I've got the feed point up in the air a little bit, and I did something a little different. I put some counterpoise wires that are elevated. So kind of like people maybe have heard of elevated radials. So I've got at the feed point up maybe 15 feet, and the wire goes up a little and comes back down. And I've got some half a dozen wires below that I was able to put in that slope down to the ground from the feed point. And I think that's helped the efficiency of the antenna. You don't always have to do that, but I think having more of those, just like elevated verticals, having verticals that are fed at air, having radials or counterpoise can help improve the efficiency.
All right, so let's talk about that counterpoise. How long? What kind of wire?
I use our small, as it 24, 26 gauge, the kind of stealth wire. So I use that. The feed point is just a small 16 gauge wire. The lengths aren't critical with these antennas, so it's really just trying to get what you can under it. If you use a single random wire, that's often enough to get the performance. It's like anything else with the vertical antenna, Tim. How many radials is a question we get all the time. The more, the better, right? It's just one of
Right.
those answers. There's
And
no
and and so remind us how high up that balun is.
So the balun is about 15, 20 feet, and then the wire actually slopes up a bit to a tree, and then it slopes back down. So it's almost like a little bit of a V. It's a short little piece going up, and then a long piece going back down. So it's not critical with these antennas to do that. The height difference, the amount of counterpoise or radios you put, the input impedance is going to change a little, but again, you're using a tuner, and then the efficiency could change a little bit as well. So these are one of these things. Unfortunately, with HF antennas in general, location, grounding, things, performance can vary, right? From one location to the next.
Right, right. That 72 feet of wire is what you have, and you're up about 20 feet with the feed point. And then what kind of coax are you using from the balun down to the tuner?
I'm using the 400 max, the DXE coax. You want low loss coax there because you're going to have SWR on that line, and you want to have lower loss coax. When you've got high SWR, you're getting losses. You want it before you get it back to the tuner, and so I'm using our 400 max coax.
And what kind of a tuner are you using?
In my case, I've got an external, 9-to-1 external tuner. So I mean, whether you're using an LDG or a MAT or whatever, that we carry, anything like that'll work. A lot of times we get questions from people about trying to use the tuners in their radios. And, those tuners are good to help a little bit of SWR, but in this case, you could have SWR even with that transformer, and it's going to vary by band dramatically. 5-to-1, 6-to-1, and you want as short a coax as you can get and as low loss on that run to your tuner.
All right, so let's talk about performance. What's the lowest frequency you can operate with that, and how well does it work?
Lowest frequency reliably, I would say, is 80. It's a challenge to tune it on 160, probably more because of the height than anything. On 80, it works. I can work from 80 all the way up to 10 meters with it. Even 6 meters, I've worked people with that antenna. It'll tune all those bands.
And not only does it tune, but how well does it work? I mean, when you call guys, and how much power are you using, that kind of thing.
So I do have an amplifier, so I can do that. It works much better than I ever expected it to, honestly, never having used this antenna. We live on a slope, so I do have a bit of a good takeoff towards the northeast. If I can hear a station, generally, I can work them with the kilowatt amplifier. The challenge is at times, and that gets to noise levels and whatnot. It's relatively quiet at my location, so it's worked extremely well, Tim. I mean, I've been really impressed with it. A pretty straightforward antenna, and I've been very happy with its performance.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's see. We've got some wire antenna users in the chat room here today,
Sure.
Jeff, and we've got Jacob, who is one of the DX Engineering customers from Texas. He's in the Fort Worth area. Our friend Steve, November Alpha 5 Charlie, is on, and our good friend Mike, Kilo Echo 3 Juliet Papa, really like 6 meters. Mike is local here, and Rob, Kilo Bravo 6 Juliet Fox Lima. Rodney, KJ5 Fox Whiskey Charlie. He's currently using an N-Fed wire based on the LDG 9-to-1 with a 71-foot wire, so very close to you, Jeff. And from one fence to a 23-foot painter's pole on the other fence, and 84-foot link and another link for 91 feet. Links are the guys. So he's doing quite close to what you're doing there. And he says that he's using a G90 radio and tunes on all bands 10 through 160. So that's really good. Rodney, thank you for sharing that. Our friend W3MLJ, Michael from just outside of Pittsburgh. And Rob says it was good to have K3LR in the log once again. And Rob, thanks for the QSOs. Maybe you even talked to Jeff, who was sitting in the 10-meter chair over here. Dan is on, WA4 Mike Oscar Mike. It's been a while since I checked in. Got to get back in the habit of checking in from Kentucky. And Rodney says he's currently got 96 DX, both SSB and mostly FT8, running 20 watts. And we've got Kilo India 1 Papa. Chris is on today. And he says he's an avid HF contester, and all my antennas are wires. Rob says that with his 134-foot N-Fed wire out the second-story window with a 49-to-1 balun with the choke, capacitor, 3 feet of coax, between the box and the antenna, and the wire goes out. It's a half square, 410 through 160. Our friend Scotty Meyer, part of the DX Engineering team, Kilo Golf 9 Zulu. And so great to have you on today, Scotty. Jeff, how long have you had this 72-foot wire antenna?
So 4 years that I've been using it, Tim.
All right. And so if you look at how much it cost, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Now, you made your own 9-to-1 balun, is that right?
Yeah, I did. You can make a 9-to-1 balun and do it that way. So we got the cost of the cores. Wanting that, like I said, we have the the chameleon you can buy from DX Engineering. Other than that, it's wire and some coax. So it's not an expensive antenna by any means.
By any means, and especially if you want to make your own, we have ferrite cores at DX Engineering, so you just buy the ferrite core. And I would think on the internet there's lots of design plans for that 9-to-1, right?
There are, and on this antenna as well, N5TJ with the different lengths, kind of a chart on what bands you want to operate and what the recommended lengths. You can go with shorter wires. You're going to miss the lower frequency bands, but it's it's generally not a critical because it's a non-resonant antenna, which is good and bad. Non-resonant, good meaning the lengths aren't that critical. Bad meaning the efficiency isn't the same and feeding it as a dipole. But in people that have, I don't have any trees in this lot that are tall enough to hold an antenna and whatnot. It's you're finding a way to get on the bands and enjoy the hobby. And I've had a great time with this.
That is great. I also see that our friend, local guy, Josh Zetlow, November 8 Uniform Whiskey, is in the chat room. These types of antennas are great for those who have limited aerial capabilities. My N5TJ half wave has really changed my ham career in a great way. And Josh, thanks very much for sharing that. And obviously, a lot of success stories out there, Jeff, with these wires. I also understand you're a 6-meter fanatic, and so why don't you tell everybody about what your antenna is on 6 meters and how you're doing with grids? Because I know KE3JP likes to talk about working guys on 6.
6 meters is an interesting band. Because every HF radio these days now includes 6, right? That's been happening now for the last 10 or 15 years, I guess. Didn't do it, got into that 7-8 years ago. I used my last house, I used my butternut on 6 meters, various different things. And eventually went with just a small 2-element Moxon antenna. I don't have a lot of space, but a little Moxon is a tiny antenna. I have it on a push-up pole that we have kind of bungee corded to a fence outside, and I can slide it up and down. No rotor on it. The wind comes up, I bring the thing down. But with just a simple 2-element Moxon, and again, my amplifier will work on that band. But I've worked 100 countries on 6. I've worked in the U.S. all but 3 of the grid squares for the Fred Fish Memorial Award. So that's a band you got to have a lot of patience. If I've worked from home from a lot of years before even joining DX, so it kind of helps that you're there, because when the band opens, it can be for a very short period of time. But that's a lot of fun, that band, with the simple antenna.
With a 2-element Moxon antenna on a push-up mast, and again, that's pretty low-cost stuff.
Yes.
And I do want to go back to the chat room just for a second. No Deer is on, Echo Yankee 8 Mike, and No Deer is going to fly a long way from Tajikistan to Hamvention this year. So we're really excited to see No Deer once again. And Steve, NA5C, says, Jeff, you can work stuff on 6 meters I can't even hear. And of course, he's in South Texas,
Yes.
And you're in South Texas. And Barry is on from England, Germany 6 Juliet Mike X-ray. And our friend John, November Juliet 4 Zulu, is on from South Carolina. So, Jeff, thanks so much for sharing your story today about the 72-foot N5TJ half-wave antenna and some of the things that you've learned with the 9-to-1 balun. That makes it it's very cost efficient when you look at how much fun you can have for a low cost investment. That's really cool. And we encourage all of you to get out there and experiment. It's springtime. It's time to get out there, put up antennas and see what works and learn about these things. And I think, Josh and UW talked about the fact that it's changed his ham radio career over working with these wires. So that's very cool. Jeff, thanks so much for all you do to help our customers. And boy, it was a lot of fun operating with you this weekend here at K3LR. And we got to do that again soon.
Thank you, Tim. Been my pleasure. We look forward to it.
All right, get on the phone, get on email. You can talk to Jeff. He's got a world of knowledge. Geez, he's got 3 gold medals hanging on the wall there. So he knows a thing or two about this radio hobby. And the idea is to get on the air, have fun with the best hobby in the world. Thanks to all of you for watching today. Thanks to Jeff and the rest of the sales team. Katie back at headquarters. We'll see you next time here at DX Engineering. Until then, 73.